responsibility in a way, and you appreciate that you're an ally and you want to tell the stories, and you start wondering like how. So putting it on Instagram was never going to be my plan, just by coincidence, and I think it was the smartest thing that I did, because now there's a conversation, there's a dialogue, there's a desire from other women to speak, and as the project progressed, the answers got a bit heavier and more intense, because I think girls saw other girls and saw what they said, and they said, I want to share my story as well. So to me, that has been really powerful. It's this like, there's this network, they don't know one another, but they know their stories. So we've been just able to do it, and I care for this text more than the photo. I like the girls to choose the photos, but I mean, some of those answers when they talk about intergenerational mental problems and trauma, it's just it's so intense to think about it. And what I like so far is some of those girls you would never in a million years think they're from Yemen,
right.
And they have, what makes you Yemeni, what makes you Arab. It's like I really just enjoy seeing their answers, and there's so much poetry and struggle and pain, but also beauty, and so I'm really enjoying it, and I don't know how far it will go. But I'll probably continue it for years to come and see. I'd like to see how far it goes, and and I'm working on it and like launching another project next year, hopefully. But that would be a 1-year project. Just look at this idea of men bodega workers.
Nice.
I don't know how things will go, but I'm enjoying them. I see them growing. Like, I have there's 12 portraits so far, and they're really meaningful. But they've never been exhibited before. So although it's kind of known to the world, but it doesn't get on my nerve that work has not been exhibited or so, because I think I created it with a mission to tell those stories, and I feel like I'm utilizing social media to the best of my abilities.
I do like it to crop in. I guess that's where that millennial culture comes in. I like a cropped Instagram type of portrait.
Interesting.
Like a snapshot.
This is your aunt here?
Yeah, the one on the bottom. The one on top is a still from a musalsal. And within that musalsal, it was there was a conversation about elitism. But to me, it read as a conversation about Arab proximity to whiteness. And I guess the equating success to whiteness and those things around that. That's my friend Byrell behind my sister. That's on the easel. He has a blonde wig on.
Wait.
My friend Byrell behind my sister.
Oh, that's your sister?
Yeah. It's amazing. Well, real quick on my sister, I painted that portrait, and it looks like a hybrid between me and her. It's it's amazing how she could look so feminine, but at the same time have such masculine features. It's the nose and the crookedness of it.
Yeah.
But she's still so pretty.
Right. No, it's a stunning portrait.
But I'm also doing things with that, she's gonna have evil eye earrings. We were just having that conversation the other day. And she's gonna have her name in Arabic as a necklace, and I'm putting a New York City skyline. And then this other portrait that I'm painting, it's it's somebody wearing a keffiyeh and a Yankee fitted cap on top to blend the two things together.
Yeah.
I'm still deciding if I want to make the hat, the bandana, that white pattern bandana that you see, or if I want to make it a keffiyeh pattern. There is that conversation when it comes to art about ambiguity and not telling the whole story, but leaving it
I've built a very specific relationship, I guess, much more intimate with the space, obviously, with the pandemic.
Yeah.
And so I also had to make do with what was available, you know, which is like I wasn't going out a lot. And so I had to like rediscover and rethink my space in a way, and started taking a lot of photos indoors. But overall, this place, you know, I would say this is also the first place that I've lived in for so long, and so over time was able to kind of work and really kind of make into my own cocoon, let's say. And so there's something about being in this space, surrounded by all these records and books that I like, and you know, sort of I don't know, like it's just I feel like there isn't really this clear-cut line between a lot of like my different art practices. I mean, I've been focusing on photography a lot, but also like, you know, DJ and used to do a lot of like sound art stuff and music. And so it's just, I think being in this space and like getting in the zone, even though it's like a little confining sometimes because I don't have a studio, but there's something about just being able to, I don't know, being in this environment that for me just puts me at ease and allows like my creative juices to flow. And if I'm feeling stumped somewhere, I can like pick up something else, right? Like I can focus a little bit on music or see if that inspires me something, or pick up a book and, you know, either read or look at some photo books and see if that kind of inspires something and triggers something. So yeah, does that answer your question?
It does. It does.
And I feel like doubt is one of the worst things for art, because there have been times where I would be, because of like negative reception or thinking too much what other people think, that it made me hesitant to even make work. And then that's just like for me, hesitance to express myself just means kind of like a ceasing of existence in a way. It's like if I don't do anything, it's like I don't know how, it's like I'm not really alive if there isn't evidence or actions that are authentic to what I'm thinking and believing. Yeah, so I mean, that was just like a rock performance, and now it's like this whole idea, because it was just supposed to be me carrying a rock in New York City for 48 days as solidarity with Palestinians and a literalization of the baggage that I carry as a Palestinian here, and just how, I don't know, I wanted to put my identity into an object too and bring it into spaces, and it helped me understand my positionality better by understanding, or it helped me understand my positionality better by analyzing an external object. It's harder when it's in you and it's too deep, and harder to access because of that. And then to see how other people treat it versus me being treated a certain way because I'm Palestinian was like a deflection of my identity.
And so when I'm working on a painting like that has multiple layers, of world building, I want to say, so that other people who don't live in that who aren't from that environment can understand it and get a sense of what it feels like to live in that space. Then I'm probably working in silence. Then there's so when I'm starting with the image, I have a lot of things that are drawn in the sketchbook, and then I trace them on tracing paper, and then I transfer it to the canvas. So all of that is done in silence, and then all of the arranging of the different elements, the objects, plants, sometimes maps, all of that arranging happens in silence, because there's a lot of like me moving things and stepping back to look at it, and then moving it again, stepping back to look at it, and moving it again. But before I decide, okay, I'm gonna draw this in here. And then when I finally do draw it in there, that takes hours. And so that's all in silence too. Then when I'm painting, the painting's actually the easiest part. It's like the research and the trace and the drawing and then the tracing and then the retracing and retracing that happens. All that is like the main amount of work. But research, I like to say that the research is 60% of the work. Yeah.
Is your approach for designing for the body like the same approach as designing for
the viewing it? I think that I always want there to be a relationship, whether it's, I guess I'm at the very least thinking about scale and the relationship of the body, like the material to the body in that way. But interestingly, I think I tend to be, when I design for the body, it's usually not as layered. And I'm usually thinking of the, if it's something that's more comfortable, so it's like, okay, like this is a comfort garment, this is I guess it's more practical and thinking more about the function a lot more. There are things, function, like when I design for the body, I think about function a lot more. I also think about craftsmanship and wear. I do things when I'm, assembling these type of fabric collages that I would never do for a garment because it just, after one wear, it'll fall apart. And for me, if I'm going to be making garments and if I'm going to do something different than like what is already available out there, then at the very least it should last. Like that's kind of the, like everything I do has to do with like materials, living multiple lives in a lot of ways. So it's like, yeah, I don't know if that answers.
I think it's important to say, like, my grandmother who passed away, she was all about crocheting and embroidery. She did this pillow for me. So just like her work, it's so precious to me. Yeah, so I think that's another reason that I use a lot of fabrics in my work. It's like acknowledging that I come from these people who created, who have always been creating.
That's so cool. It's like you're sourcing materials from your past.
Yeah, it is kind of like that. Maybe to make myself feel better about choosing a very precarious career path. Or, maybe it's not just about me. It's actually like, if you want to get mystical, others may be trying to communicate through what you do. I think that could be like that. There could be something to that idea that we make these images and it's just about a bigger thing than us. So
I mean, it's so interesting to hear that, right? Like being like connected to your like Egyptian ancestry.
Yeah.
And it's not like, when I think about my ancestors, like I can only think so far back, but to be able to think.
I mean, they left an amazing archive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the benefits, I guess, of being Egyptian.
Everything I do seems to be process driven. Like I work a lot with cyanotypes. That was like a big phase of mine, and the project, you're not seeing them right now because they're stacked behind each other, but I spent like a lot of time in 2019 and even early 2020 working on canvases where I would layer images of skies that I photographed in different parts of the world, and then just like make that exposure and then make another exposure and then make another exposure. And the idea was to collapse time and space and not just geographical borders. Because if you think about it, and it all started from like a conversation that I was having with a friend in Berlin many, many years ago, where he said, hey, let's set up a call. And he goes, how about 3 p.m. Tomorrow? And I say 3 p.m. your time or mine. And then he goes, I forget that we're also separated by time. And that kind of sparked something, and it took me a couple of years to act on it. But I couldn't stop thinking about this, and for a while, in early 2019, I binged these readings on physics, but physics in layman terms by Carlo Rovelli, and he was talking about how time effectively does not exist regardless of the fact that we perceive it. And that's kind of like what got the Cyanotype on Canvas project started, because I was like, it's interesting, we've made up those time zones, we've made up time, we even perceive time linearly because our brains can't conceive of it any other way. And it kind of, it begins to make sense that we also need to separate space one way or another, even though it's not that simple, it's mostly politically motivated. And I figured, what happens when, you know how like the traditional definition of a photograph is you're capturing one moment or whatever. And I'm like, no, why? What happens if you're capturing several moments across several time zones and you're collapsing them onto one image? How many borders and boundaries are you breaking then? And if it's on canvas and if it's cyanotypes, like it's technically a photograph, but is it really a photograph or is it a painting? Like, and that's what I mean when I say collapsing structures.
And that's why I often say that I make works within forms of collapse, because my histories have to do with certain collapses and at some point in my life I realized art is a space to do that. So I'm an artist, not because of being great at it, but it's a space for me to make work about things that I feel I must. Yeah. There are certain instances with materiality and form that have been great experiences for me to do, but art for me, the making itself, is an uneasy space.
That as soon as I saw that mosaic, I was like, that's my calling. That's what I know I'm called to do. And they heard the story and they were like, so when you went up there, what did he say? I said, he said, no women, no Americans. And they're like, he's our uncle. Don't worry, we're gonna walk you up there tomorrow. So about 5 gorgeous Italian men walked me up this hill into the studio, and they're like, Constanto, she spent the night with us. She's a good girl, good girl, good girl. She needs mosaico, Constanto. It's her dream, it's her passion. And he asked me that same question that you just asked me, and I told him, I said, there's something in my spirit that when I collect small things, there's something about small things that make me feel calm and centered in the world. And he was like, I think you might be a mosaicist. So he said, okay, here's the deal. I'm gonna let you into the school on a trial basis. You have to live with me, because here in Spilimbergo, young girls don't go around without a chaperone. So you're gonna have to be like my daughter, because I'm gonna have to be your protector while you're here in this school. We've never had girls in this school. And look, and all the men were looking at me. All of them were like, oh, and you know, I was nice, young, pretty girl, and they're all looking at me, and he's like, all of them? I have to keep all of them away from you while you're learning. So he's like, I don't want trouble. I don't want any trouble, so no, you know, hanky-panky between all of you. He's like, you're gonna live in my house, and you're gonna be like my daughter, and you're gonna do what I tell you to do. And the second thing is, while you're learning mosaic, you're not gonna ask questions. You're an apprentice. You're here to just watch and observe. And so for a long time, I just made coffee, swept the studio, organized materials, fetched for all the guys. Get me this, get me that. But I just was like, okay, this is an opportunity, Haifa. You have an opportunity. Do not blow it, because there's no place else to learn this. There was no place in America at the time to learn it, and I knew that I had to make this work. So I was there for 3 years, and I learned classical mosaic.